How's it going? What's up? We're here for chapter 2 of the summer lecture series. I guess that's what you can call it. So this is going to be chapter 2, the contest for North America. That's what it's called, right? So hopefully you're working on your chapter questions. Just a reminder, do not write all of this down. This PowerPoint's a little bit shorter and a little bit more concise than the last one. So it should be shorter. How many slides is this joker? 31. So it's half the size, right? But not half the fun. Okay, that was bad. I'm sorry. But as always, let's start off with a little intro, and then we'll go from there. Nice. Thank you, Danny. I think that's it, right? You should be getting used to me now, somewhat. I don't know. But we will see each other in class in, what is today? It's 2 o'clock on Monday. We see you next Thursday. No, next Wednesday. I go in this Thursday and start getting the room ready. Should be fun. But let's just get this going, right? Let's make this short and sweet. Remember, just a reminder, do not write everything down. Make concise, well-written notes. Chapters 2 and 3, PowerPoints kind of bleed over into each other. Some of the things that are a little bit more important, I kind of put in both of them. So just pay attention to that. And, yeah. And then after we get done with 2, then we do 3, and then 4 and 5. Wow. We're just having all kinds of fun. So let's get this going. All right. Where are we at? On the screen. Oh, there we go. Yeah. The conquest for North America. So we've already established that we have Christopher Columbus, Hernan Cortez, Francisco de Pizarro. Is a fun word to say, but this is now going to be between the French, the Spanish a little bit, but mostly the French and the English for North America. All right. So and France was a little bit late. England's way late, right? They're like some of you guys getting up to my 3rd floor classroom going to be at the beginning of the year. You're like, 3rd floor, that sucks. But yeah, I'm on the 3rd floor. Sorry. So on here you have the Edict of Nantes or Nantes. I don't know. I don't know French. So basically, what this does is it means that France is going to take an interest in North America. That's basically what it was. There was clashes between the Catholics, the Protestants, and so. But the Edict of Nantes kind of solved that. And so now they're going to be looking towards colonization. All right. So English colonization, what helped shape their view? They really thought of Native Americans as inferior, right? We talked a little bit about the Spanish and the way that they treated the natives down there, right? They almost all died. They conquered them. But they saw them as inferior, but they would commingle, they would get to, you know what I mean? It wasn't like the English and the Native Americans of the North. English and Native, they wanted nothing to do with them for the most part. Pilgrims, different thing, okay? They tolerated a little bit different, all right? And it's almost the same thing as they did with the Irish, okay? And it was this us versus them thing that you can see there. Sorry, excuse me. An us versus them thing. Very similar to the way that they viewed the Irish, especially because, it's just the way they did it. So they brought that same view over to the New World. All right? And that's what kind of led to the confrontations that they're going to have. Right? So there's old King Henry VIII. And this guy, has a wife who's not giving him a son. And So he wants a divorce, but they're Catholic. And the Pope says, "Nah, son, you cannot get a divorce." And Henry VIII's like, "Yeah, but I want a son, though. Like, I really do." But we all know now, it's up to the man to decide whether or not, you don't get to actually decide, but it's biology, right? The man decides whether it's a female or a male, right? So he wants a divorce. He's like, you know what? Okay, I'm not going to get crazy. I'm not going to just go kill a bunch of people. I'm just going to change the religion of the entire country. Seems reasonable, plausible, right? But when he broke with the Catholic Church over this, now he becomes Protestant. Now we're going to have this huge conflict. And it became more and more dominant when Queen Elizabeth took over. And these privateers, and we'll talk about those in a minute, and they start attacking the Spanish. So they look for England, and Queen Elizabeth is she's like, yeah, privateers, those are good people. We can work with them, right? And we'll talk about what privateers are in a second. The English also wanted new markets. They wanted more prosperity. Markets meaning like they wanted some place that they could sell their goods to, right? And we'll talk about, how that works into it. And they believed it was too crowded. So they're like, hey, let's give all the homeless people, ship them over to North America. Because we're crowded here. It's not too crowded. They just didn't want them there. So, if you're out of work, send them over, right? And that's going to lead to indentured servitude, things like that. Queen Elizabeth, all right? These English pirates, okay? Privateers, quote-unquote sea dogs. Sir Francis Drake was a very popular one. She had some crazy dresses. If you've never seen the movie Elizabeth and Elizabeth the Golden Years, those are great historical movies, right? We will assign movies. The first 9 weeks will be the first 2 episodes of John Adams, which is on HBO. And those are extra credit, and I'll explain those later. But, all right, so these guys, they traveled the world. They would steal from Spain, because remember, Spain is stealing from the natives. So it's like, steal from Spain, right? And so that's what they do. And they do it very, very well. Then you get Roanoke. Roanoke is established in 1585, right? It's this little tiny island right off the coast. And it just disappears. Nobody knows what happens. Aliens, man. Aliens. That's what it was. It was aliens. Literally, like they came back. There was nobody there. It wasn't a struggle. It wasn't like it was all burned down by natives or anything. Like, it just looks like everybody walked away. So maybe it was and aliens took them. Right? I don't know. We really don't know. I'm not even joking about this. Like, we don't know. We don't know what happened to them. No bodies, no signs of, struggle or malfeasance. So, it's a mystery. But the English are not, deterred. They're going to come back. But they're having to deal with the Spanish Armada. Now, King Philip II puts all his eggs in one basket or in one fleet of ships, right? And you're like, why are you talking about this? Why does this happen? Okay, so he puts them all in these ships, and he's going to attack England and their Queen Elizabeth. Now, the problem here is they're huge ships, and they go to attack. England sends out their small little ships, and there's a bunch of things that go wrong, right? The Sea Dogs, you could see faster, more maneuverable. They just started lighting these things on fire. And then there's this thing that eventually becomes known as, you see it, the Protestant wind. It's a big old storm, right? But they believe that it was, God favoring the Protestant religion. And they blew a lot of these ships onto the rocks where they got stuck. And then when you're a stuck sailboat in a war, in a battle, you can easily be defeated. So that's what kind of happened here. Okay. You're like, oh, okay, again, Mr. Green, why are you talking about this? Well, I am talking about this because here's a pretty cool painting of the defeat of the Spanish Armada. I'm not like I'm a big art you're going to see in class, but like certain art, but like this one is always like, I'm like, that's a good looking painting. I just like it. I don't know. But remember, the one thing about the Spanish Armada, all right, is this is the start of their downfall. From here on out, yeah, they're losing, right? So this is England is on their way up, right? And then Spain was, and then at this point they meet, and then Spain goes down, England goes up, right? So England is going to be, from this point on, working towards becoming the most dominant force in Europe and in the New World. They do a very good job of it. From here on out, Spain is going down, right? It's slow, centuries, for them to really be, you're out of here, out of Central and North and South America. But it's the beginning of the end, okay? Now, I put up here some of the importance of it. England's navy was dominant. They become the world power in that sense, especially in the navy. And they're very like the Spanish were prior. They were dominant. They colonized. They took advantage of the people. A lot of the things that the Spanish were doing prior to them. And so there is a peace treaty between the two. And they're not going to really go after each other anymore. Okay? So you need to know the cause, and that's a big thing with College Board, is cause and effect. Especially around wars. Wars aren't that important. We'll talk about, a lot of wars. But what you need to do is you need to really start understanding why the war happened and what happened because of it. Right? And then you got to remember all the stuff that happened between the wars, especially when we start getting, America gets established, the Revolutionary War. And then really the first war we're going to really, really talk about is the French and Indian War, but that'll be in class. Okay? But what happens between wars, the cause and effect of events, is what College Board really wants you to understand and be able to explain. There was a lot of people in England, and there was this depression that hit. So this is all going to really lead to England wanting to spread out. All right? They need more money. They have more people. And why do they have more people? We talked about it in the last lecture. If you're saying in your head, oh, it was something with that dude that came over. Yeah, that dude, Christopher Columbus. What did he do? Why does Christopher Columbus have to do with more people in England? The Columbian Exchange and potatoes, of course. Good job. I know you guys all got that, right? Potatoes, right? Potatoes were introduced into England. Very stable food source. You could survive on it. So people were living longer and longer. And therefore, when you live longer, you have more kids, and then you're just alive longer. So then you add to the population. So, and then laws of primogeniture. I can't say it. I'm not even going to try it. This one, only the oldest sons inherited their estates. So they're like, the younger ones are like, well, what am I going to do? Let's go make our own fortune, right? Because they aren't going to get anything. So that's what they did. They left. And then you have the Virginia Company. Hold on. Thinking about something here. Nope. Okay. I wasn't sure. I was looking for something else on the computer. It was the Virginia Company is a joint stock company. Okay, and you need to understand what a joint stock company is. I know it's in your it's going to be in your note cards, which hopefully you're starting just do at least do a little bit of them at least. And if you're confused on those, there's instruction stuff on Google Classroom. So joint stock company, what is it? Well, basically, it's so one person doesn't foot the whole bill and the whole expense of starting a colony. What they do is they say, hey, like John and Tom and Bill and Thomas and then Jonathan, and there's a bunch of Johns and, those type of people. And they get together and say, hey, you got some extra money, I got some extra money, let's put it all together. We'll create this company, and then we'll all split the profits. That way, if it fails, we don't lose all our money, right? And so then they had the money to make multiple joint stock companies. And then when they made multiple joint stock companies, then you can make more money. And so you're trying different things. It's like diversification of your portfolio, stocks, if you've heard of that, right? Same thing. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's basically what it is, all right? And if you invested, you would make money depending on how much money you invested. And that's what the Virginia Company was, all right? So they found Jamestown, right? Now, Jamestown, these people that first went to Jamestown, there's 144 men on 3 ships. 40 died on the way over. That's a lot. Just saying. And they landed in Virginia, which, if you've ever been to Virginia, especially in the summer, is swampy. Yes. Nice and hot, but then it also gets really, really cold. So, yeah, it's got the best of both worlds on that perspective, right? There's a lot of mosquitoes. Mosquitoes have killed more people than anything in the history of the world. More than wars, more than anything else. Mosquitoes. Number one killer of human beings, right? I don't know if you knew that one. But what unrealistic expectations are, right? What does that mean? Well, what does that mean? Well, they came over with just the expectation that they would be walking along. Hey, how's it going, Bill? Oh, it's going good. Here's a piece of gold. Oh, that looks good. Well, here's a ruby. Here's an emerald. Wow, we're really getting rich fast. That's basically what they thought was going to happen. It did not. They starved, and they starved a lot, right? Not very good leadership. I put that up there. And they also had conflicts with the Powhatans. Powhatans. Yes, I believe that's right. But they starved, right? I mean, it got down to the point that they're eating their shoes. Shoes, because they're made out of leather, right? You can eat leather. It's animal skin, cow skin. Not so tasty, though. Not very advisable. I mean, it got down to the point where one guy, saw his wife, and, it's like those old cartoons when the chicken turns into, it looks like a chicken roasting. It's I think that's what he saw his wife, and he saw just roasting, and he's like, well, I'm hungry, and she's there, so I'm going to eat her. Yes. Cannibalism. Not just 1 or 2 instances. It wasn't widespread or anything, but you're hungry. These people were hungry. All right. And like I said, they weren't planning. They were just looking for gold. They were looking to get rich quick, to pay back, and to make money for these joint stocks, right? So, not going so well, right? We already talked about that. Oh, nice car brake. Yeah, once in a while, there wasn't any on the first one. I do main brakes. I do car brakes. Sometimes I'll do a science brake. I know that sounds weird. Math brake. Oh, those are fun. This one, it was a car that came out last year. This is the Gordon Murray T50. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but you'll get these every once in a while. That sponsor the car club, if we have one. If anybody's interested, hit me up. But this thing's awesome. He designed the original McLaren F1, which is the greatest, road car of all time. And you can see it's really cool. It's got a central seating position, right? It's got a naturally aspirated V12. Look at the interior. It's beautiful. Beautiful. Look at this shot. You get to sit in the middle. How cool is that? And then you can see, right? Instead of just being on one side and hey, how far can I go over there? Right? You're right in the middle. And I'm not going to get into all the technical things with the fan and what that's doing. It has to deal with the downforce and stuff like that. But if you want to look it up, it's called the Gordon Murray T50. T.50. Pretty sick car. There's his original McLaren F1. Right? That's what it was. He designed that one. Yeah. Very similar, right? But that was designed in the early 90s. So, still one of the fastest cars of all time. Then we get Captain John Smith in his glorious mustache. Glorious. Look at that thing. His whole outfit's, just dripping. I mean, green leather, brown leather arms, and he steps into Jamestown and throws down the hammer. And he's like, this is what we're going to do. His famous quote at the bottom, he that will not work shall not eat. That's a pretty good one, right? Hopefully your parents don't say that to you. That would be bad. But yeah, if you don't work, you're not going to eat. That's why the guy's like, well, what if I just eat my wife, right? Don't do that either, right? That is bad. That's probably what this guy was doing. But he turns Jamestown around, all right? But they still starved because they had, when it's winter, you can't grow anything, back then. They don't have hot houses and things that we can grow now. So they ran out of food and they started starving. Dogs, cats, they would cut up their houses for firewood, and only 60 people survived. So, one instance of the old cannibal, Hannibal the cannibal thing happening. I think it's one or two. Might be just one. I'm not exactly sure, but it definitely happened. That's not funny, but it did happen. So, and then you have in 1610, they start having more problems with the Powhatans. So we have two wars, known as the Anglo-Powhatan Wars. There's a first one and a second one. And they were, a lot of the Native Americans were dying from smallpox. What else we have on this one? And, between the two wars, you had almost wiped out the Powhatans completely. Okay? And that's the first and second wars. So you really need to understand Lord de la Warr. I know, a pretty good name. He comes in, changes things around, but maybe not for the best. Instead of working with the Powhatans, they definitely go to war and almost wipe them off the map. Now, and the Virginia Company, you have 4,000 died out of the 5,500 people that came in the first, almost 20 years, right? So it was not an easy way of living, and it wasn't something that would happen long term, okay? Now, these three things you need to understand that saved the Jamestown colony. Tobacco is the big one, and we'll talk about that in a second. Representative government, so you're making everybody have something very similar. That's what we have now. And, of course, women. You're like, what? Women weren't there? No, they didn't bring women. So the big problem with that was people didn't see it as a home. They saw it as something that they were just going to make money off of. And the thought was if they brought more women, the men would be happier. And then, hey, Millie. My sister came over with it. Come here. No, she don't want to come. And you get women that arrive too. Here's a meme break. This one cracked me up. I remember I had this kid my first year at Boca High. He would bring full-on sandwiches first hour. I mean, I don't care. If you're in my class, you can eat as long as you're not messy. It doesn't bother me. Come here. There we go. How you doing? And okay, tobacco, savior of Virginia. So John Rolfe brings tobacco over, right? And this is highly illegal just to possess the tobacco seeds. Now, nobody knows how he got them, but he did. And if you were caught with tobacco seeds by the Spanish government, they would chop your head off. It was serious, okay? So it was something that they don't understand how he got them, but he did. He brought them in Virginia, and they were perfect for Virginia's climate, right? And with tobacco, which is a very labor-intensive product. They started bringing in indentured servants. Then eventually they're going to bring slaves in. And 1619 is the first year that African slaves are brought to the New World. 20 of them on a Dutch ship. We don't know if they're 100% slaves or indentured servants, but they're going to be there for the rest of their lives. I mean, they were definitely taken. Okay. You're not going to get in until the middle 1700s later, where slaves are going to really start ramping up, and numbers. Okay. So for a long time there's slaves, but they're not in the numbers that when we think of, especially in the 1800s. All right. And that's when the slave numbers really explode. But in the 1600s, they couldn't buy anything. They didn't have enough money to use slaves. So they're going to use indentured servants until a certain point in time, which we'll talk about. And so they created this headright system to get some more people to work, where England said, hey, if you pay for men to come over as indentured servants, we'll give you 50 acres a head. This is the headright. And they started using these indentured servants, right? And you had 7 years you had to work for them. It was very expensive to have them sent over, which is why England was like, well, we'll just give you land. Land's free because only Native Americans own that, right? And who cares about them? So they had to work, and they were supposed to get land. And that's how they got a lot of the people to agree to it. Like, hey, we'll come over. And people were like, well, we got land for you, so, you'll be good. And the people in the New World weren't really following up on those promises. The men would get done with their time, and they'd be like, yeah, well, you did this, this, and this, and so we're not going to give you your land because you were fined. Or they just came up with reasons why not to. And sometimes they just said, yeah, we're not. You have to keep working. So it was a system that brought a lot of people over, but it definitely was not beneficial to the colonists. All right. And what do I got here? We have... Yeah, okay, so that bottom one is very important. And by 1700, you are a slave if you are black. That's determined by race. So that's a big deal when they pass that law, and that's going to stay around for a long time. So if you're black, you're a slave, right? You're not an indentured servant. Don't worry about that one. Virginia House of Burgesses, first representative government. It is, I know it looks like burgers, but it's not. Kind of an easy way of remembering it, right? But this was the first representative government, and you have to remember this. Have to, star, circle, circle, dot, dot, whatever you got to do. This is something you have to know, the House of Burgesses in Jamestown in Virginia. Okay? And finally, we get women arriving, and they went to Jamestown. It did make it a lot better because men thought of themselves as now being permanent and they could protect and things, start a family and that whole thing, rather than just being transplants working out for themselves and things like that. It made it more of a civilization. Okay. And then, let me see. What do we got next? We got Pocahontas and then Maryland. Okay. I'm just checking where we're at. So we got Pocahontas. It's not as big of a story as everybody makes it out to be. She met John Rolfe. They fell in love. She went back to England, caught smallpox, died, right? The biggest thing was it was just a Native American and a white Englishman, right? And they fell in love and got married. Interracial couple, right? Which is not even legal in the United States until 1972. Yeah. So we'll talk about that one. That's Lovey, Virginia. But Maryland, okay? Now, when you think of Maryland, you have to think them as the Chesapeake area. And we'll go over this in the next chapter when we break down the colonies by things like that. Maryland is a haven for Catholics. It relies heavily on slave labor, eventually as more slaves come in by the 1700s, and they grow tobacco because it's the Chesapeake Bay. You can see it up here in the little map right here, right? This area, this is Delaware here, okay? Will eventually be Delaware, but this is Maryland. So all of this Chesapeake Bay is great tobacco growing climate, all right? But it was supposed to be very religiously tolerant. We talked about that one already. And this is a timeline of things that happened. And I'm going to give you guys a really nice timeline that I made last year for all of this that includes these things. And you're going to need to know a lot of these, not necessarily everything in order, but if I gave you, you know, from the very beginning, from Elizabeth becomes queen to Second Anglo-Palatin War, you need to be able to identify one or two things within there, right? That's how College Board is going to do it. And we'll talk about that later, okay? So that's it for Chapter 2. Stay tuned for Chapter 3. Hopefully everybody's having a good summer. I know you don't want to be doing this, but hey, it's better than doing it the first week, right? So peace out, A pushers, and I will see you for Chapter 3. Oh, how do I stop this thing? There we go. Still figuring it out. Peace.